totally have another surprise up my sleeve, so you can have that one for free.
Awesome.
Yeah, you'll
Not
appreciate it.
not to mention the fact that I could kind of tell. I just didn't think about it.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let me see. Let's make the sound reverb on your behalf. You're welcome.
Mm.
Let's do that. Obviously, if you can't hear this in like 10 seconds, only wait 5. Let me know. On that note, here we go.
Welcome to episode 159 of the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast. Today is Rocktober the 12th, 2014. I'm Matthew Dean Furlo, and this is my sicko brother, James Furlo. You're silent. You're silent.
Man!
I know, it's
2 weeks
awful.
in a row. That's killing me.
So close.
Anyways, as I was saying, yeah, that's right. I am sick. You know, I try really hard not to use the S word in this household. You know, because it's like once I admit it, it's real. You know, and I'm under the false impression that somehow it's still a mental game, and you know, and if I just not say it, it won't happen, and so.
This is a weird harkening back to our last week memorial to Steve Jobs. Speaking of not acknowledging your sicknesses.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't work. So I end up getting sick anyways. So there's that. So I'm now fighting that. I've got my box of tissues here.
Perfect.
Yeah, I've got my soup here.
Nice.
And then I've got my yeah.
Hey man, don't be afraid to have a light trigger on the mute button, because those are a whole lot of sounds that I don't need to hear tonight.
No problem. As you see, I was already ready to go.
Exactly. Started out with me. This is awful, but you want to know my favorite? Like, speaking of sicko, this is awful. I don't know why this is so awful, but I think it's kind of funny to call deaf people defos. Oh, he's a defo. I don't know why that seems so much worse than calling somebody a sicko, but I don't. It's not worse. It can't be worse. But it's just like, I don't know. Somehow giving it a cutesy name. It's insight into Matthew. That's how I roll, man.
That's weird. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I could just be sick and not thinking clearly.
That's
a little weird.
All right. That's fair enough. You know what though, James?
Go ahead.
Go for it. No, you say first.
I was gonna say I have other cool news.
Go for it.
I am the new happy owner of I'm attempting to pull up the app right now as we're talking of a Nest Protect.
Whoa!
Yeah, right there.
Protect.
Nest Protect.
Wait.
What?
Did we already announce that we got the Nest in the in general? Period.
Oh. Maybe we didn't.
I don't think we did.
Wait. If you.
I know.
Finger,
I can see right there.
Right there.
That's awesome.
There's my Nest.
That's awesome.
And according to my Protect, my house is not burning down right now.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
That is always good to know.
So I'm headed towards the life of automation and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess. Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago. I was like, I want to get a Nest because we had the old analog type of thing that just, it doesn't work. It's either on or it's off, and there's like, it gives you the false impression that there's an in-between because it's a slider, but that's not how it works. And, I don't know.
Technically, that's how they all work. It's just the control realm on it is not very good because...
Yeah, not very good at all. So I was like, we need to get a new one, and I was like, we could get this $25 one that technically does it, provides a schedule, or we could get this one that's 10 times the amount, and I can control it on my iPhone.
Which
And
is totally worth it.
yeah, it'll learn my schedule. It'll tell me how I'm doing relative to others. 1 second.
Okay.
It will. That was me coughing. That's
I got you.
what that'll mean in the future for those of you listening. Um, so it does that. So it was actually really cool because they tell you like they what?
Every time one of us gets sick, I always think back to that one time I tried to mute the show and didn't,
Yes.
and then blew my nose, just one of the grossest, sloppiest nose blows of all time, right into the mic. It was like whoa. That was just so you know, that was live.
Yeah. I'll
Sorry.
probably miss one of those anyways. So it's kind of fun because they tell you like you have to manually do things for like a week. Is kind of how long it takes it to figure out what's going on, and then it'll learn. So like for example, I've been waking up every morning and I have it on a nighttime setting. It's set to like 50, and then in a way setting it's at the 40. But then when I wake up in the morning, I like it warm. So I'm like, let's turn this bad boy up to like 76. Kind of get it nice and warm in here. And then I'll back it down for like the rest of the day once the house kind of heats up. And so so I've been doing that, and this morning it was pretty awesome. Woke up at 5 o'clock and my alarm went off, and just as my alarm went off, the heater kicked on.
Oh, nice.
I was like, oh, I could get used to this.
Yeah.
Schedules are awesome.
Yeah.
And I never told to do it. It just was like, it's 5 a.m. It's time to get this going.
This is about time.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then it just so happened, random, our fire alarm also died this week. And it actually died probably like a couple weeks ago. And, you know, you all listening know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so we finally got around to replacing the batteries, and well, that didn't actually do anything. It still did not work. So we're like, I guess we actually now need a new fire alarm. And it turns out like the fire alarm combos of the fire and the CO2, which is a requirement for our place because we have a gas thing and we have an attached garage.
It's not CO, it's CO2.
I don't know, maybe CO. I don't know. Carbon monoxide? CO. Whatever. You know, there's a C, there's an O, whatever. I don't know. I'm not
got a couple letters.
So anyways, they're like $40.
Yes, they are.
Combo. And I was like, oh geez, I'm already spending $40. What's an extra $60? I mean, I'm sure I could get 2 and still go out to dinner, but yeah. But I was like, but I'd be part of the Nest ecosystem.
Yeah,
it would also be a nightlight. I mean, so the way to think about it is $60 nightlight.
Yeah, I had a similar moment this week, but you know what, James? I'm gonna actually sidetrack this. I'm gonna hold off for a couple of seconds.
Okay.
So we can get through the intro, because one of the things we do every week is this part, which is this week, like every week, we'll be talking about technology and quote the continuing corporate opera. And by corporate opera, what do we mean? We mean the soap opera of corporations' dealings back and forth, the people working for them, their marketing campaigns, and of course the technology they are developing. But before we get into the heart of the show and me talking about my cool stuff, Jim's got a short disclosure he's got to throw our way.
Yeah. For the next year, I work for HP, Hewlett Packard. However, I do not represent. I feel like I should be saying Hewlett Packard or any of Hewlett Packard's opinions, because in a year I will be working for HP Inc., which is kind of hilarious that they called it HP Inc., because that's where the majority of HP Inc.'s revenue is going to come from.
Ah, yes, I got it.
Yeah, they just spelled it with a C instead of a K, which is fine. That's allowed.
And technically, legally, you have to, or you have to call it
probably
incorporated
or
you know what? Something. Yeah. You know what? One of my favorite stories of all time was it was a wildlife preserve company started by hunters up in Canada, and they started a company that wanted to protect ducks. That was their big thing, and so they started a company called Ducks. But in Canada, when you incorporate, you're a limited liability corporation, so it was do limited, and so the name they came up with was, they were thinking, spitballing names, but this the open forest and the open ranges, and they didn't like the idea of it being like Ducks Preserves Limited or something limited. They didn't like that, so they ended up calling it Ducks Un, and and it became Ducks Unlimited.
Yeah, we have an article on here that was talking about the end of the .com tyranny.
Yeah.
And it was saying that, at least in Web 1.0 and 2.0, before the apps really, you got a .com name. And there were very few examples, like Delicious, where they didn't go the .com route, and they ended up even spending, I'm probably sure, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get Delicious.com.
Yeah.
Because the expectation is like everything ends in .com, and they're saying now with apps, they're like that's no longer a requirement, and so they were starting to list off all these, recent apps, I guess, like Whisper, I guess, does not have a .com, and a whole bunch of them, and it was this idea of because of now, how do I want to say it? Because we're getting away from the .com. These companies can name it whatever they want now, but they also start to get like super creative because you have all these fancy, these endings, and so you can create these words, and it's just got a dot stuck in it, and that's like Ducks Un.
Yeah, exactly.
Is like a forerunner in that, like, okay, how do we deal with the fact that we've got this word limited.
We're fixed with some sort of a suffix, and we can get creative within those.
Yeah.
It's like ma.tt.
Yes.
I still hate him.
Don't worry, because you know what? His life is not perfect either. By the way, he's the founder of WordPress, so kind of a good guy. If there was someone, I know you hate him. That's fine. He's actually like kind of awesome. Have you noticed though? He's totally gone the long hair, kind of out there. I don't want to quite say hipster. Not hipster, hippie route, but he's very much into that. Like he was so clean cut just like 5 years ago, and now he's more flowing. But anyways, he actually was like complaining because when you typed in Matt, he goes, "I wasn't number one." He goes, and the reason was, and this gets back to the .com thing. He goes, if it wasn't a .com, it actually took a hit in the Google search engine. Plus, he goes, there was that dang dancing Matt who was super popular.
Yeah, I don't like him either.
Yeah, he goes, so he was always ahead of me. He's like killing me. He's like, so it became my mission to become the number one Matt. And I don't. Where's let's see here, Matt now. No, he's still number 2. Actually, now he's below even in the news. Poor guy.
I know. Well, he deserves it.
And then you got Matt Cutts from Google, and then the Matt Walsh blog. I have no idea who that is. And then Wikipedia entry about Matt Harding.
Matt Mullenweg. Matt Stupid.
The guy was born. Oh, this is the kind of stuff that just kills me. He was born in 1984, so he's a year younger than me. And I can't read stuff like that. That just makes me.
Honestly, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm getting to that age where I'm starting to get older than I'm starting to get to the point where I'm kind of median age for the NFL.
Yep.
That's not fun. That's not a good place to be. Wow, they look really old and really attractive and really rich, and I don't look like any of those things.
Yeah, just wait a couple years. Then suddenly you'll be older than almost all of them.
Right? Yeah. At least my brain works. That's not true.
You got that.
Yeah. So,
welcome to the Furlo Bro Psychology Show.
Exactly. So, anywho, if you want to follow us
Saturday, so I'm in that.
Hey man,
mindset of
I'm keeping the powder dry because I obviously this week was a tough one to come up with. What is my brother's title? And next week I was like, oh, I got it in the bag. I know. Also happens to be my cake day for Reddit. As I bring it up to every year now because I don't remember why. But anywho, if you want to follow us throughout the week, we're all over the social internet and stuff.
Intro.
So my Twitter is at Matthew D. Furlo. But the important one's my what's it called? The one thing with the pictures, Instagram. I already got it set up.
Still important, which we established last week. Still matters.
It's true. Actually, this week, an article I didn't talk about, somebody was talking about how Facebook is so over, and all the teens are leaving Facebook. It's not cool, and and Facebook's gonna lose to one of its major competitors, Instagram.
Wonderful.
What? How is that not a major win for Facebook Corporation? I hate people. Anyways, it's just clickbait. It's just clickbait.
I mean, I get, like, I don't want to say it, like, yeah, I read the stats too. It was like, 74% less usage or something like that. But it's like, and I get, like, you're writing an article, but how do you miss that one?
We see that's the thing is they didn't miss it. They skipped it because it's not an interesting article.
Gotcha.
It's clickbait. And anyways, so if you want to go to Instagram, my Instagram is nextwiggin4, NEXTWIGGIN4. If you want to play with me some Destiny, it's my PlayStation 4 network gamer tag is the same, nextwiggin4, and it's pretty awesome, man. I was shooting up some aliens. Actually, I wasn't shooting aliens. We did a strike team with 5 guys the other day, Saturday, and it was awesome. It was probably the most fun I've had playing video games in forever. And like we're all over the world. It was me, one of our cousins, a friend from college, one of his friends, and then this random dude that we like got hooked up with a couple weeks ago for this like random mission. We friended him, and the 5 of us were like just messing over other teams. It was great. It's so weird how fun video games now are. I feel like they've actually been this fun all along. I just forgot for some reason.
You're new to the party.
It's awesome. I'm so bad too. I'm awful.
We were in Costco on Saturday, trying to decide if we wanted a Costco membership at all or not, because it's $55 a year, and
ooh, it's gone up.
Yeah, I know. Someone was telling us it was only $35, and I was like, for $35, I'm in. For $55, I had to think about it. I mean, I just bought a Nest.
Yeah, right.
Come on, let's go here.
I only got so much money.
Yeah. But yeah, so they let you kind of walk through and check things out. So we're like, yeah, sure, why not? And so the problem that Costco runs into is that we also live near a Winco.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's only 2 of us, so there's that. So, yeah, so...
it's all about the gas station. If you're going to get your gas at the Costco, I think it makes sense.
That was significantly cheaper, I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't drive I don't just drive that way, I actually drive the opposite way. So, but anyways, we did stop and check out the TVs, and I was like, oh man, there was an 80-inch television there.
Oh, so beautiful.
Mighty fine. And I do know, I was at a person's house for church last Monday for a high school boys thing, and they had a 70-inch television in their home, and it was unbelievably gargantuan.
Did you make fun of it, squint, and say, how can you see? It's so small. It's on 80-inch. I was like...
I was complimentary of it.
Oh, yeah.
But then you get into Costco, and you're like, that's 70. It's just...
it's dismal.
It's not doing it for me in this big cavern.
Right.
It just always reminds me, like... Because we're like, I don't know. Would a 40-inch really be big enough, or should we go like 50, 55? And you look at the 40 in the store, and you're like, how is that any better than my 20-inch that I have now?
Yeah, I can't barely see it from here.
I know. And then I'm just like, I have to no, that would be too enormous in my home. Which I know the answer, which is just make one out of cardboard and put it around and figure out what size I'm.
It's true. It's true. You know what, James? Though you got to give us your information because.
JamesFurlo.com @JamesFurlo, pretty much everywhere except for Reddit, but I'm not really on it, so that doesn't matter.
Nice. So yeah, it's funny. I say all this. We got a huge show today, and we're like wasting all our time on stupid stuff at the beginning. So I bought a new phone.
Yes,
it happened. I did it. It turns out the Moto X is harder to get a hold of than the iPhone 6 Plus. I think I've mentioned that on the show before. Simple explanation when people ask, like, how is that possible? The Moto X isn't as cool. What happens is that Moto X isn't one of the world's biggest manufacturers in the world, where Apple is. So Apple has more supply, is what it comes down to. But simple truth is, you just can't get a Moto X to save your life. But what you can get is an LG G3. This little baby.
What?
It's an LG G3. This little baby is considered a similar flagship. Same size battery, same size processor, same quality camera, power button on the back. It's a 5.5-inch LCD screen. Runs Android 4.4. The only downside is that it's got the really disgusting AT&T slash LG overlay on Android, like their garbage that comes with it. But you know, it's
Click root, you can figure that out.
I know, but
You
there
want
are
to
some.
return it.
I would say there are some questions about returnability with a rooted device. I have my buddy who actually who works for the Best Buys and is helping facilitate this whole process. Assured me that if we did it, he could probably get them to return it. And I said probably, and he said yeah, probably. And I was, how about we go with definitely? Because turns out this is a $700 device.
Wow.
This is a pile of cash that I just dropped, and I don't want to accidentally buy it. It's a cool phone so far. I've had it working. I've been playing around with it on Wi-Fi because, of course, it's AT&T branded. I hate AT&T so much. I had to get it unlocked. I did get it unlocked. It's quite nice. But I've been playing it with a Wi-Fi and just trying it out. I just got it hooked up with my T-Mobile account this afternoon, so it's I got it running on the 4G LTE. It's cool. It's a cool phone. I'll give you that. The screen is ginormous, but I like it a lot.
What's the
It's the same as
size?
yours. 5.5,
5.5.
5.5. So it's good. So for me, so now I've tried 3 different phones, right? I've tried the iPhone 5. So if I got the 5S, I knew how big that would be. So I would do that. Come on, let's be real. It's me. Then there's the Lumia 1020 is the size of the iPhone 6, so that was kind of a good.
Dang it.
Got to see where my thumb would land on that. And then this guy is the size of the 6 Plus, so which is the phone you have, and so it's sort of a test of how far can my thumb reach.
Yeah.
And the answer is not to the other's corner.
True.
But you know, lying in bed watching YouTube videos, kind of cool. It's kind of nice. You know, it's
video games are fun too.
That's kind of where I'm sitting. That's actually the bigger selling point to me is playing games and stuff. I feel like this is a good option, and I feel like for the most part I can do the whole thumb thing, and I think with the cool home screen thing, I might be able to be talked into the iPhone 6 Plus. And you know what the funniest part about that is? I didn't even do I tried to not do this on purpose. Where chalk myself into getting a 6 Plus.
Yeah.
But I knew I would. I knew I would. I knew I would. And it's funny. I'd say the bigger screen, not that big of a deal. If it weren't for the fact that I had the better camera and the better battery, I probably would just go with the 6.
So I've heard the better camera is not really noticeable, but the better battery is.
That's a huge selling point to me. But I'll tell you what. As cool as the LG G3 is, and it is quite cool, the real selling point on this baby ain't what in my hand, but it's what's on my wrist.
What?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. I got myself a Moto 360, and so I can tell you it is 8:54 right now in the evening.
That's what my clock says. That's
wow, it's Googling stuff for me right now. Let's wait. Okay.
Hey Google. I can't hear me. Or was
okay, Google, send a text message to James Furlo. Good show so far. Having a great time. Talk to you on the other side.
So no audio feedback.
Well, no, but it's all it's okay. There's no audio feedback, but the whole thing is it's ocular feedback. It shows me everything.
I just got a text message from Furlo saying a good show so far. Having a great time. Talk to you on the other side.
Which BT Dubs that kind of nailed the text translation. I mean, it's gotten it right every time. So far. I mean, I'm not. It's never going to be 100% perfect if you slur a little bit, but I've been very pleased with the overall text. Whatever its ability to do that kind of stuff. It's every test you see shows that OK Google's better than A Siri.
Yep.
I'm not gonna try go so hard core fanboy that I can't deny that. Siri's pretty good. I like Siri. It works pretty well. Works well enough for me. OK Google works better. It's true. But I've been using this thing for 12 hours. I've seen the future, and It's this. This is it. This little device right here, the smart watch. Everybody who tells you that, like, I don't get it, you just why is it so hard to pull my phone out of my pocket? And you just sit there and you go, like, I kind of get why that's hard to understand, but it's just like one of the things is one of the big examples that I give is, like, for me, I like to use Siri to, like, send a message and while you're driving or something. But the thing is that it's like you got to pull the phone out, because if you've got the mic and you've got it going, like, sometimes it's hard to just trust Siri and its ability to, like,
Yeah.
to spell everything right. Whereas here I can see it. I can see if it's working or not. Like, it shows me. And that sort of ocular feed, the visual feedback on the audio input is perfect. Like, I have no problem with the input on this. The directions work well, especially when in concert with the phone. So it's like I got music, I got my Weezer playing over my Bluetooth stereo. I've got my phone is showing me where to turn. The directions are being spoken to me on the phone. Like, the whole thing, when it all works together, is awesome. It's awesome. And I just sit there and I go, like, this is so obviously the future. It's not even funny. Like, I still stand that in 2 years you're going to get your first Android Wear watches that are coming with a 3G antenna for light data things, like just simple push notifications, maybe text messages included, and that'll kind of go into your bucket. They'll figure out a way to work with the telecoms to kind of do that sort of a thing, I think. And then eventually, and then it is really a standalone device that just tells you when you need to go to a bigger screen. And that'll be huge, it'll be like that, and then within 10 years, everybody will have a phone, or will have a watch instead of a phone. Might have a phone, but it's a supplementary device.
Oh, wow.
I really, really, just using it briefly, there are huge shortcomings on this thing, like huge, but the foundation's there. It's undeniable using it just for a couple of minutes. And then one second.
He's in the back of the room grabbing something, coming back.
Yeah, so because I was standing in line with my LG G3 and my Moto 360 and was waiting for the guy who was going to check me out, and I looked over and I saw this little device for a couple of dollars, the Chromecast. I took one look at it and I was like, oh man, I'm already spending so much money. I shouldn't get it. And it's $35. And then I thought about it for a second. I was like, that's really stupid. Why would I not get it? Like, I'm testing out all the different, like, pieces of the ecosystem. How about I just go ahead and get it and then return it with the rest of it if I don't like it? And it's $35. Worst case scenario, you keep it because it works with iOS. And now I've got another, input. Like, seriously, what am I doing here? So I got it.
Oh, yes. Wow.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, man. I went techno geek this week. I dropped a G. I have not, like, just ran a debit card for a G. I think it's the first time I've ever done that.
Really? Well,
yeah.
Club.
I know. It felt pretty good.
I do that, like, once a week at least.
Really?
At Home Depot, yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah. I think I've probably spent $10,000 the last month at Home Depot.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's awesome. That makes me feel uncomfortable just thinking about it. But
yeah, I try not to.
I know.
It's an investment.
I was gonna say, you gotta spend money to make money, as they say, which is why I spent the money on this.
At least it's not my money.
Yet. But yeah, man, I'm very excited.
That's cool.
I got 14 days. So I thought I had 45 days, but
yeah, that's not the same number.
Yeah, no, it's really better this way because Best Buy's got pretty persnickety about their return policies and stuff. So the less time I have it, probably the better for possible damages and stuff. But so I'm gonna keep it for and it's one of those things that's like 14 days, no question asked, they'll take it back. 30 days, you like just without any help, you can usually, like, if you really twist some arms and call in a manager, you can get them to return it. And then my friend says he can actually pull it off as late as 45 days. But I'm like, once again, don't want to accidentally own a
Yeah.
$1,000 worth of Android equipment when I'd rather have an iOS equipment, you know.
Yeah.
So, but it's very cool. It's very cool. I'm pretty impressed with the
Are you
360.
questioning your decision yet to
No,
stick with iOS?
no, not yet.
Wait a week. Talk to me.
Yeah, you know, I think what's going to happen. I
You
haven't
already like
been.
it better than the Microsoft debacle.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, just far and away.
Hmm.
Things way better. You know, just and the app ecosystem and the keyboard works better. And okay, Google is awesome, and not you know, and it's got Google Maps and it's got the whole 9 yards of the things that I like. The one thing I can say is, so I've been using this most of the afternoon, the watch, and I'm at 66% on battery life.
Yeah.
So I can tell that this is going to
You're gonna
be.
charge it every night.
No, yes, I'm gonna charge it every night and it'll be dead by the time I get home.
Mm.
And that's gonna be pretty unpalatable, I think, pretty quickly. I think, and honestly, that's gonna be the biggest shortcoming, is it's not a daily charge, it's a bi-daily charge. And
Yeah, it's you charge in the afternoon after lunch type thing
yeah,
at your
and
desk.
that's just not gonna happen. Not, you know, I'm not gonna buy another charging station
Maybe
just
get a
for the,
battery pack for it. That just kind
yeah,
of
right.
underneath it and around your wrist, kind of
Mhm.
like a wrist weight.
That won't be awful, but you know, battery life is going to be a huge limiting factor on these things. So, you know,
Oh, unless
figure-
some companies have figured that
mm.
out.
Hey, you know
Pebble
what?
as one example.
Hey, you know what? Touche. Like honestly, like you know that this is really cool and it's fun and it's impressive and I think it looks great. But if you can't use it all day, it's not worth the money.
Showstopper. That's fair.
Yeah, you know, and so you know, it's
And I
one.
get the sense that it's difficult to be a heavy watch user. Like you could be a heavy phone user, but I just doing it with a watch, I feel is a little bit more difficult.
Well, see, that's the
All
thing
that to say, you're
is,
not special, or you're not a. That's not what I meant to say. You're very special,
oh,
and you're
thank you.
unique. And gosh darn it, we like you.
Right?
Dude.
You know what's so
P.S.
weird? He's a senator.
Actually, I was listening to this. It was a speech by Mr. Rogers the
Yeah.
other day where he was petitioning the Senate Committee of Funding stuff to give essentially PBS $20 million to to run their thing, and and so he's like, they kind of teed up and like, we'd like to, whoever that senator was in charge of it, they're like, we'd like to introduce you to Mr. Rogers, and and he's got like that, that Mr. Rogers slow
Yeah.
cadence going, and and uh, and he starts talking and start doing his thing, and talking about his show and what he does and how it works. And he's talking about, I care about kids, and I am deeply concerned about um, their mental well-being and the information that they're receiving, and that they learn that they are special and unique, and that it's okay to have feelings and how to deal with those feelings. I mean, it was I at the end of it is like a 6-minute speech, and you get like maybe 4 minutes in, and I'm like, I don't know the right way to describe it, but it's like a half choked up, half like inspired to go out and change the world. Like, you know what I mean? Where you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's like saying amazing things right now. And at the end of the 6 minutes, the guy was like, well, Mr. Because this guy had like never heard of Mr. Rogers.
Oh, weird.
And yeah, I know. I was like, really? How do you not know? But it was near the beginning of it, I guess.
Right.
And so he's telling him about his show and stuff, and he gets to the end, and this guy's like, well, Mr. Rogers, I think you just got your $20 million. And it was to the end, and I was like, yes, like watching this video and applauding out loud, like, yeah, that's right, way to go, Mr. Rogers. I kind of wish that I had been an adult when he was doing his thing.
Yeah.
Because apparently, a incredibly talented guy. He wrote it. Not only did he host the show, but he wrote the show. He did all the puppets. He wrote all of the songs, and actually like performed them. And you know what I mean? You're like, oh man, this guy was actually like incredibly talented.
I think one of the most absurd parts about about Mr. Rogers, in my humble opinion, is the fact that in today's day and age, it's very, very hip to. For the longest time, the media would just ignore the dark side of our media stars, whether they were movie stars or football players or presidents or politicians or whatever, like everybody. And then, obviously, in the past couple of decades, the movie stars started to fall from grace, and the athletes, then the politicians, and just this much more cynical view. And we kind of get everybody's dirty laundry, and you get their entire lives and everything. And now we're doing it retroactively. We're looking back at our old stars and our old presidents, and we're saying, "Oh, this guy was sleeping with her, and that was going." We're getting everybody's dirty laundry. It's very, very, very popular. Nobody's safe, and no matter what rocks you overturn, no matter where you look with Mr. Rogers, there's nothing yet. And like it's like, and that's how cynical this whole thing has made me. I feel like saying nothing yet, but the fact that there's nothing yet almost suggests that there's nothing. Like, he was as genuinely nice and wonderful and talented as he came across, which blows my mind, because it's like, it's one thing to be that good on TV. And there's some value in it.
Well, it's kind of like, you get the sense. No, he wasn't acting. He was just doing his thing, and there was a camera.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He has got this really cool quote about. I actually have it saved because I think it's a cool enough quote. You should choose your heroes a la carte, picking and choosing from one and then another, thereby assembling a kind of composite hero. That way, when you discover something reprehensible about any one of them, it matters nothing to you, because that's not the part of them that piqued your interest. So, which I think is good, because most heroes have flaws. It's what makes movies and books compelling, and the fact that Mr. Rogers seems as genuinely cool as he came across is genuinely cool.
Yeah, and the surprising part for me too was he thinks deep about what he does and took his show very, very seriously.
Yeah,
and you could tell it was he goes, yeah, he studied psychology, and he studied education, and he studied kids, and you're just like, wow, he's thinking about his TV show much more seriously than we ever did. And so, anyways, I don't remember what got me on that thought track, but Mr. Rogers, kind of awesome. It was, what were we talking about beforehand?
My watch. We haven't even started the show, really.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, it was about me watching this video and being emotionally affected by it, I think, was the takeaway. Pretty awesome. I don't know if you can. By the way, just so you know, none of Mr. Rogers' shows are on Hulu or Netflix, but if you go to the PBS website, they're all there.
Nice.
In their entirety. So, which I think gets to what we talked about a couple weeks ago about the idea of the Cartoon Network, or Saturday morning cartoons not being a thing. There's something. Expose your kids to it. It's probably good. You'll probably learn something too. And they've broken them into all categories. So you can do the How Stuff Works episodes if that's something you're into. And so, yeah. Anyways, here's my Mr. Rogers plug.
Right.
Yeah. So, phone. We'll talk more about it obviously next week and the week after that. I want to get updates, find out what you like, dislike. Ultimately, when you decide to become an Android fanboy and get off the iOS milk.
It seems inevitable, doesn't it?
I don't know. I remember what my thought was. Man, we both had Google purchasing weeks, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's true. They made a lot of money off of us for briefly. So, yeah. Let's
actually do the articles.
Yeah, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk.
Which
about
I think we've unofficially talked about too. That weren't highlighted, so we've got that going for us. I'll start it off.
That weren't highlighted, right?
I know. I'll start it off. So we already kind of talked about it last week, but it is official, as we've already talked about. HP's breaking up.
Oh baby.
Apparently they're not better together.
Yeah.
Oh man. Could have been a politician. But apparently now's the time, because we're stronger than ever and it makes sense to do it, so they're doing it. And so the interesting part about it, besides that it will affect me personally in a year, so you're not even going to really hear about it for 9 months, is that it would appear that this is kind of the new thing to do. And HP is just the latest in an entire string. I mean, I know that we talked about the whole eBay, PayPal thing, but Nokia technically did a spin-off of their
Nokia.
company.
Mm-hmm.
Nokia, yeah. Motorola was another one,
Yeah.
and there was just like this idea that that companies that are smaller and more focused are usually run better, and management tends to get their performance up. And so what's really interesting though is that after the spinoff, it usually takes about 12 to 24 months for that company to start heading in the other direction. And so from a stock standpoint, this is actually really fascinating, is that when you spin off, usually you'll split the stock, and what happens is you have a whole bunch of index or fund managers and investors that now hold this stock that didn't necessarily want that stock.
Right.
It was part of a balancing thing, and now it's not out of it, and so they will then spend a year or sometimes more, depending on the size of it, um, dumping the stock to rebalance their thing. It has nothing to do with the company. It just has to do with like their portfolio. They need to get it back to what it was.
Right.
And so they're saying that what's fascinating about them is that if you, because there's a fund that actually tracks this stuff. I'm trying to remember the actual number, and I don't think I can find it fast enough. But it was something like, oh, here it is. The Okay, yeah, here it is. So there's the Guggenheim spin-off ETF. So it's an index that follows spun-off companies. Over
Ugly
the
name.
over the last 5 years, they have gone up in value 224.7%.
What?
Compared to the S&P 500, which has
Okay.
grown 106.2%.
That
So
ain't
over
bad.
twice as good. And so again, it's this thing that which the numbers back it up. They're usually actually better run and do grow better, um, but what happens is it takes like a year or two for that turnaround to actually happen. Part of it is you're learning how do we do this in a new company. I mean, because a bunch of questions that we came up with was like, well, what's the effect on IT and HR, and how's all that going to work out? And so
Right.
it kind of takes a year to figure that out and get your systems in place, and have that no longer be a distraction, I guess. And on the owner's side, for the actual people who want to own the stock to be owning it, it just takes a while for all that stuff to move. But anyways, just real quick, I thought that was fascinating. I own like 70 shares, so I'm not too concerned about it. It's not a big part of my portfolio. There was like 1 year where HP was into giving stocks as part of the bonus pay compensation. So
Yeah.
1 year I got 70 shares, and that was the only year they've ever done it. And I was like, all right, whatever, I'll take it.
That's funny.
So yeah, kind of fun. But yeah, so they're breaking up. It is actually official.
All
And
right.
there's a reason for it. Apparently, it'll go better. So
Yeah. Hey, it's cool. It's cool to
see.
know.
My job, from a day-to-day basis, will never change. So I'm good.
Hey, for the record, it's 9:14.
Because your watch told you that.
Yeah, I can check the time, so I'm going to take advantage of this as much as I can. Um, so speaking of breakups, and so it sounds like this is HP was a bit of a conscious uncoupling, if we want to go with a social media term for breaking up. It seems pretty. It seems everybody seems cool.
Conscious
Okay.
uncoupling.
Yeah, it was Gwyneth Paltrow and the lead singer of Coldplay, whatever his name is. When they got divorced, they called it a conscious uncoupling. They are
Wow.
they make
I kind of like that, but at the same time, like, wow.
yeah. See, the thing is, they're super serious about it. See, they make pretentious people seem normal and down to earth.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's just a mutual breakup. I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Conscious
Yeah,
uncoupling.
we're
That's awesome.
getting a divorce. They had like a weird ceremony and stuff. I don't know. And then
Like a divorce ceremony?
yeah, kind of a conscious uncoupling ceremony. Like
Huh.
They're wackadoos, kind of. I mean, it's like whatever, man. Live your life your way you want to live it, but
Changes my perspective.
the fact that they both were willing to do that is kind of astounding. That they weren't happy together. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you really think you're gonna find somebody else who's willing to do that with you? Like, I just make it work, okay? Jeez. Anyways, so talking
So I
about
was I'm sick, and so I kind of get to watch whatever I want. So we watched The Wedding Planner on Netflix because you watch romantic movies when you're sick. That's what you do, okay?
all right.
You eat soup. That's what you do. That's what I do, at least. Anyways, but they were toying around with this idea of like, is there one true love, and can you just make it work with somebody? It's an awesome, fantastic movie. You should watch it. Of course, I've learned that pretty much like we already established that any Amy Adams movie I like. I think I'm also in the Matthew McConaughey camp as well.
Oh man!
Which means I'm gonna love Interstellar. And
oh,
so
I can't wait!
I've already decided.
I can't wait! That's so excited! That's so excited!
I know he was in it. Looks like an interesting thing. Batman all around. Like, yeah, I'm in. I'll like it. So, anyways.
That's funny.
Conscious uncoupling.
Yeah, so talking about breakups, how is it possible? I know. How is it possible that we haven't even talked about anything yet? So there was a bit of a to-do this week. GT advanced. So obviously,
10 times advanced.
Yeah, one of the big rumor mills leading up to the launch of the iPhone
Last
6
technology
and Apple Watch.
What does GT stand for?
I don't know. Their deal was they started this they started setting up this giant facility in Arizona, building and setting up sapphire crystal furnaces to make these huge sheets of sapphire crystal. And the rumor was that it was going to be used for Apple iPhones and Apple Watches and all sorts of stuff. And they were talking about the supply. It was going to be like double the world's capacity. I mean, it was just going to be a huge, huge endeavor. Apple cut this huge contract with them for like $500 million, basically.
It's a lot of money.
And it was all money that they were giving to GT so that GT Advance could set up this facility in Arizona to get the supply going. GT bought a bunch of podunk companies all over, and they're not podunk at all, but bought a bunch of companies all over the nation, bringing their technology and the different things that they were doing together to make this happen. This was a huge endeavor, tons and tons of money, and there was some concern about the company, but not much. Quite a few investing companies had them marked as a buy. Nobody had them marked as a sell. There's this rating system that I'm kind of unaware of, so I'm just kind of telling you what I read. But it's like a 5-star rating system. 1s are like hardcore sells, get out of it, the company's collapsing. 5s are hardcore buys. They're about to launch a cure-all cancer drug. Like, go for it. And what they do is they just sort of average everybody's ratings, right? And so the average on Wall Street is like a little above 3, right? It's like 3.2, 3.3. GT was rated as a 3, which is a solid hold, maybe buy, depending on if you're feeling a little bit risky, right? Pretty good standing. And then all of a sudden, Monday, they declared bankruptcy. What? What? And it was just like out of nowhere, all of a sudden, GT Advance said, "Oh, by the way, we're completely insolvent, and we need to get out of a bunch of our contractors and get rid of a bunch of our debtors." So this whole week has been one of those like, so what's going on? There was a couple of things. Number one, investors are just stunned. I mean, like, so as of Monday, everybody was just shocked. Like, there was a bunch of articles, just people like talking. By the way, so this is happening. We have no idea why. Nobody knows anything. GT was keeping their mouth, shut on the whole thing, and one of the things is like, and investors who would like the couple of the investing companies that had them marked as like buys had to like that day were writing their people like unbuy sorry, and because the stock went from, I think it was $14 a share to less than $1 a share, due to the announcement. I mean, it was a plummet. It was just an absolute free-for-all. So anybody who was heavily invested got
hosed,
Yeah, thank you.
hammered,
Yeah, and like
lost their
investors.
insurance.
Yeah, exactly. And these big investing companies are having to write their people like, so we got this wrong. Um, but nobody had him marked as a sell. Nobody thought that this wasn't going to happen. And so now people got big questions like, what's going on? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Immediately people started looking into the CEO. CEO turns out the day before the Apple announcement. So right before the Apple announcement of the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, the expectation sapphire glass for the two phones and then sapphire glass for all the watches, right?
Right.
And there was some hesitation already by that point, but like a couple days leading up, GT's soaring high like $17 a share. The announcement happens, they dropped to $14 a share. Day before the announcement, CEOs sold $1,600,000 of shares,
Ooh.
which looks really bad unless you consider it. But on the other hand, he's sold nearly $10 million worth of share since the beginning of the year, which so it's actually kind of a small portion of you know. But he's also sold $10 million worth of shares over the last year, and you're kind of like, what is going on? There's a
Yeah,
little.
because that kind of stuff doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. I mean, it's all it was an interesting timing. I think the $160,000. That's probably one last shot, knowing that there was going to be a 25% hit, and ended up being worth 40, a couple hundred, couple $10,000 to do it that day instead of the day after the announcement because he knew it was going to take a hit, and okay, but it's all SEC, governed. CEOs don't just sell their stock.
Yeah, you gotta disclose it and tell everybody.
So it's this isn't shocking necessarily, but it just doesn't look good,
Yeah.
especially in 2020 hindsight's sort of thing. So. And then it sort of becomes, now it's a big question of what's going on. So everybody went to Apple immediately and said, like, hey, because this is Apple's supplier. This is the future of the Apple Watch. Like, what's the plan here? What's going on?
Yeah.
And everybody kind of expected Apple, initially the rumors were Apple had withheld the final $125,000 payment. So they've been giving these payments based on progression.
Yeah.
So
that normally works.
Yeah, and so the rumor was that they had withheld the last $125 million, or they hadn't paid it yet, which is true. So everybody was thinking, okay, well maybe Apple was like they weren't getting the yield that they wanted with the glass, so they weren't getting
too hard. Yeah.
Yeah, they had for some reason they had decided GT wasn't keeping up their end of the deal, so they weren't going to give them a quarter of or eighth of $1 billion is reasonable enough, but makes them insolvent all of a sudden. Well, so everybody runs to Apple. Hey, Apple.
Which, man, if you're insolvent on that number, maybe they're just not a big company. But there's a part of me is like, dude, it's 125 million. What's the big deal?
You're right.
That shouldn't make you insolvent. But maybe, what am I saying? I would, yeah.
Hey, James, you're right, and that's the problem. So
what's their here? We'll do what we do. Finance, because I feel like this is a special of ours.
A specialty.
And I'm typing in this meeting. So let's see here. It's GT Advanced GTAT.
GTAT.
Let's see here. Financials. And they are, let's see, this is in millions. No, that's actually a significant amount of money for them. Because if we look at their annual data, oh wow, they're actually. Oh, this year's not. What? Okay, so in 2011, their revenue was still millions, $890 million. In 2012, it was $955 million. And then, what is something's going on? I don't know what this 9 months thing is. But the 12 months ending in at the end of last year was 300.
Yeah. So I've gotten a little bit of a backstory on this company because it happens that I work closely with SwageLock salespeople, which I don't know. Do you know who SwageLock is? Are you aware of what their deal is?
No.
They do all sorts of different stuff, but one of their big primary things is they do gas system components. So especially like high vacuum, high purity gas systems. So valves, regulators, piping, all sorts of stuff, which is incredibly important in the semiconductor market. And they're one of the biggest players, and they all make tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of money. But GT Advanced, what it was it was basically what it is basically a bunch of different so a decade ago, solar was a big deal in the semicon industry. Everybody was building these solar furnaces, solar fabs all over the place, and they were doing all these. They were adopting and growing the semiconductor technology to fit this new market. So you had these kind of flexible companies that were coming up with ways to leverage old technologies into new stuff. So it's kind of their specialty. Well, Sapphire, you grow in a similar. You basically grow Sapphire like you would grow any substrate, like silicon substrates. Like if you're going to take a silicon wafer and you're going to inject and you want to build a silicon chrysalis on top of silicon, and uses similar technologies. And so these companies are pretty well positioned because the solar market has collapsed, and they're pretty well positioned to take on a new challenge like growing Sapphire. And so basically what GT did is they came through and bought a bunch of these smaller solar furnace companies, OEMs, and kind of turned them into this and GT was one of these solar furnace OEMs, and shifted them all and said, hey, we've come up with this cool idea for sapphire furnaces, but specifically a new type of sapphire furnace that can make a bigger piece of sapphire, which is huge. It's a big deal if you can do that. And the furnaces were working, so all these companies kind of started to come together, and they all started to supply, moving everything towards this Arizona furnace. So it's a new technology, new manufacturing technique, and they're all it's proven on a small scale, but now they've got to scale up to this giant factory in order to get this actually going. So this is kind of what the history of the company is. But the deal is they were betting the house on this sapphire furnace, more or less. So Apple, when everybody came to them, I think it was Wednesday, they're like, so what's the deal? And Apple was like, honestly, we're as surprised by this as you guys are. We are not prepared for this. Which, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, something hinky is going on. I'm not sure what it is, but it's hinky. And very quickly, when you as soon as you announce you're going to declare, you start going through all the process, and judges get involved, and blah 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 blah. Well, GT Advanced immediately goes to the judge and says, "Hey, we want to file this whole thing in secret." What? We don't really want to disclose anything. I'm like, why not? I'm like, well, we've signed all these huge non-disclosure acts, basically, all this confidentiality stuff with an unknown company, and we don't want to violate the non-disclosure stuff, so can we, keep it all on the DL? At this point, it's looking really, really, really bad. Like, something really bad is going on. So all the Apple lawyers show up to this this meeting, of course, and because it gets confirmed, yeah, it's Apple is this big company that they've got all the confidentiality stuff signed with. And basically what came out of it was the judge said, no, you can't do that. Obviously you don't have to disclose and should not disclose anything that is materially harmful to Apple, but you got to disclose what's going on. You can't not talk about it. And it's funny, as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, I know what they did there. That was obvious. They basically needed a judge to say, to break them out of the non-disclosure stuff. That wasn't them trying to be hinky and scary like the articles were were suggesting. It's basically they legally said, hey, we can't tell you what's going on until a judge tells us you can break the you can start talking about this. Yeah. And so basically what happened was and then GT Advanced started to just fire wildly, and they basically just came out and said, look, they're blaming Apple, and they're saying they're being too burdensome
That should go
to
really well for the relationship between them.
they're become too burdensome to continue operations, and they're like, we want to shut down all Sapphire operations by the end of the year. Y'all know we need to, like, sell watches in like June or January, February. Like, we got a plan, we got schedules, we got manufacturing, and they're talking shutting everything down. And all of a sudden, it's becoming clear what's going on, dude. This is one of the most intense games of poker I've ever seen. They're basically saying, we're not going to make this work. We're gonna just get rid of everything. We're gonna cancel all contracts. And basically, what happens is, like, from what I don't know bankruptcy law, but from what I understand, like, when a company goes insolvent like this, the whole deal is how all the debtors, all the lenders are going to get some portion of their money back, but it's going to be a very small portion. But there are cases where, your biggest lenders can come in and take parts of the company depending on how the settlements go. And Apple is pretty invested in what this company is doing, and they need these furnaces to work. They need the Sapphire because there's not enough supply in the world. They're between a rock and a hard place with suppliers all over the world, because now it's like, now everybody knows if they're not getting their Sapphire from GT Advance, they need more supply than's available, and prices can skyrocket. And you thought that the gold was going to be the expensive part of the gold watches? Yeah, right. And so this is bad news. This is bad news all the way around, and it suddenly become, like, to me, as I'm reading all this, it just starts to become really clear what GT is doing. They've decided they don't want to be involved in this anymore, and they are figuring out how to get out of it as, like, viciously as they can. I mean, they don't want a relationship with Apple anymore. They're done. And then it comes to the question of, where do we go from here? And this is a Seeking Alpha article, and the most pertinent quote was, "This really speaks to the breakage in GTAT's game plan for the Mesa plant. Either they realized that the $139 million wasn't going to be enough to stay solvent, like in my opinion, or they realized that they wouldn't qualify for the $139 million for Apple." And Apple would withhold payment. Given Apple's expression of surprise over bankruptcy, I don't think Apple expected to withhold payment. So I regard this as somewhat less likely. Basically, what Seeking Alpha was pointing out was, the author was pointing out was, like, GT has decided that it's not going to work. They're not going to be able to keep this going. And if the product works and they've got the Sapphire to go and the furnaces work properly, and the article kind of postulates on this further, then $139 million with the biggest company in the world and the biggest product that they've launched in 5 years, probably not enough to really have this be that big of a deal. Which means chances are they know that they're not going to get the yield they're supposed to. They know that they're not going to get the performance they're supposed to, and that the furnaces aren't working. And so now Apple's in a really, 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 really hard spot, because they've spent tons of money. They need this to work, and depending on why the furnaces aren't working, what's going on, Apple probably is going to have to buy the Mesa plant, basically everything that's there, and take over operations. At which point Apple is suddenly in the middle of something that they never wanted to be in the middle of, which is manufacturing Sapphire. And it's very likely that the reason all this is happening is because it doesn't work. And which, it's funny. I mean, like, as somebody who, like, I'm in this enough. Like, I'm actually, maybe for me this is less of a shocking proposition just because I'm, like, there, but it totally makes sense. We sell stuff all the time with we'll sell two types of products. We'll sell it with or without a process guarantee. And process guarantees are basically saying the machine will produce what you want to produce. Most companies won't sell stuff with a process guarantee because oftentimes it doesn't work, and you don't get your final 10%. So a lot of times companies who do sell with a process guarantee pad their budget so much it's ridiculous, because their whole thing is, well, if we get it, if we nail it, if it works the way it's supposed to, it's just icing on the cake. If it doesn't, then whatever, we made what we needed to make anyways. And I have a feeling that these guys, they bet the farm on a process that they thought would scale fine, and it doesn't. And I think what you're going to see is, it'll be really, really interesting to see where we go from here if Apple buys everything and tries to turn it around. I think it really depends on how successful the furnaces are, if they will or not. If the furnaces don't work, Apple is going to take the hit and just walk away from it, and they're going to figure out something else in a hurry. The one thing I can say is this: Tim Cook is legendarily good at double sourcing everything. They claim they don't buy anything unless there's another supplier who can supply the equivalent amount that they need. So that
household negotiations too.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why they do it, and that's it's one of the big things that that's why they've got so many different models of the iPhone, or serial numbers on the iPhone, without or I know it's models of the iPhone, even though I have so few models, is because two iPhones that are sold or might have completely different model numbers, because one was made with an LG LCD panel, and one was made with a Panasonic LCD panel, depending on who was supplying what at what time, and they perform exactly the same because that's how Apple rolls. But so I mean, this is fascinating. This is like a super exciting drama to watch, and all this week went on. It was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? This is so unexpected. And it's interesting. It'll be really, really interesting. I do think that Apple is going to try to make the furnaces work. And I think they're about to hire some of the most brilliant material scientists in the world and say, how do we do this? And, but yeah, man, that's a ballsy plan on GT's part, just to step out. Wow. I wouldn't be surprised if Apple comes down on the CEO like a sledgehammer as best they can.
Yeah, that was kind of my thoughts. Was like, you're talking about a leader who has been slowly divesting himself, which means he's done it for a while, and that was his solution, instead of going to Apple and saying, we can't figure this out, we need your help.
Yeah.
And which happens. It's a story well worn, where you've got a problem and you don't want to admit it and ask for help, and so you just kind of keep covering it and keep hoping that you'll figure it out, and then you eventually get caught.
Yeah.
And the entire time, like, you could have just told me, we could have helped you, and you know what I mean? And you're like, yeah, but I would have been embarrassed.
Yeah. Man,
that's normal.
Pride.
Tough one. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so your company doesn't do sapphire ovens, heaters?
No, but we are going to get into silicon carbide wafers, which is oh my gosh, probably shouldn't have said that.
It's fine. Or will you?
Or will we?
Who knows?
That was definitely one of those. It's good fodder for post show conversations.
Okay. All right. We'll just keep moving.
Thank you.
No problem. Where are we? So apparently the NFL has banned Beats headphones from
I know, right?
on camera.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy. I was reading that and was like, what? And apparently they do that all the time.
Yeah.
And what was their? They gave another example. Load it up here. Since the 1990s. Yeah, so what's happened is, I love it. It's the NFL signed an advertising contract, marketing deal, whatever, with Bose, and uncoincidentally, not related to this relationship that the NFL has with Bose, they have now come out and said that the players will need to remove their Beats headphones around television cameras.
They're claiming that it's not directly related. Really?
Um, Yeah, it says the NFL has long-standing policies that prohibit branded exposure on field or during interviews unless authorized by the league. These policies date back to the early 1990s and continue today. They are not the NFL's, wait, I'm sorry, they are the NFL's policies, not one of the league's sponsors, Bose in this case. Bose is not involved in the enforcement of our policies. This is true for others on field.
Mm.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well,
one of those, yeah, where you're just like, hey, good for
well,
Bose.
yeah.
They're
So
competing.
what's really interesting about it is that is the dilemma that's going on because Colin Kaepernick, one of the
Yeah.
heroes of the day, he got a 10K fine this last week because he went to one of those post game interviews with his pink Beats on. And the deal was everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, 10K! The league's coming down hard on him," and it's just huge news for tons of articles about Beats headphones, pink Beats headphones on Colin Kaepernick because of the controversy. And you're
Yeah.
sitting there going, Beats by Apple made way more money in
Yeah.
controversy articles,
Apple
and
just won that one.
more importantly, Colin Kaepernick made more than 10K in money from his
Yeah.
sponsorship by Beats. And that's the funny part about this is the reason why all the players are scouting the rules and getting in trouble is because Beats is paying them directly. They all have sponsorship contracts,
Yeah.
and they get paid X to be on field with their cool headphones. And so it's like it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes because there's only so much that the NFL can charge these guys for doing it, and if the competing sponsor is outbidding them, well, if it's worth if Beats is willing to pay 15K for a post-show interview and NFL is going to charge 10K, well, it's a no-brainer. You show up with the headphones,
Yeah.
it's worth 5K.
Yeah.
You know.
You make a big deal about it. Yeah. Well, this kind of reminds me of, man, this was probably like 10 years ago now. I'm losing track of time, but there was one time when the NFL banned spiking the ball because they were like, it's
Celebrating,
unclassy,
yeah.
non-sportsmanlike, whatever, and the players were like, spiking the ball is what you do. That's again, that's part of the game, and so they went to the other extreme where they started doing these crazy, over the top, spike the ball, dance performance, just go on and on and on. Have all the flags get thrown, get fined tons of money, and it was like, and everybody did it until the
Yeah.
NFL was finally like, okay, you can spike the ball, just calm down.
Yeah.
So now they can do it, and and they're like, just don't go, they'll be crazy, and I think this is, it would be fun to see if this snowballs into something big.
I wouldn't be surprised, especially because up to this point, Sony has been the big headphone sponsor. So because basically what Bose did is now all the headphones on the sidelines are Bose headphones, and they used to be Sony headphones. So Sony obviously was cool about this up to this point. So I think the NFL is they're gonna end up in a place where they're like, I actually think the NFL's A-okay with it. The NFL is just gonna say, look, that's the deal. This is all we can do is fine them, and if you're not willing to pay the individual players as much as Beats is in order to, keep their headphones off the field, well then that's your problem, not ours. And Bose is just going to be in a place of, you got to be kidding me. Like, are you joking? Like, they because every time this happens, there's going to be articles about it, and it's going to be great news for Apple. The best part about this, and this is appropriate time to bring it up. So Bose sued Beats the day after Apple bought them about the noise canceling technology. This is one of those, a classic. Beats was a big company with a certain amount of money, but until Apple bought them, the moment Apple bought them, all of a sudden they became good targets, for IP law. So they've been trying to figure this out for the last couple of months, and on Friday. It leaked on Thursday it leaked that Apple was going to remove all Bose hardware from the Apple Store.
Yes.
And the next day, Apple and Bose came to a settlement, and all the rumors went away. Just like classic, just strong arm. Like,
Well, you
oh,
get this like,
so
I feel bad for Bose
oh
because
yeah,
it's clearly they don't like Apple, and they're trying their hardest to be that punk kid, and and to compete,
yeah.
and it's just like, no, sorry, we're just bigger and better than you. You
Yeah.
need us more than we need you.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, it's one of those, it's a classic example of
Oh, I love
the
it.
best player on his high school team. This kid was a god on the football field. He was the best looking guy, the best player. He's the senior. He's the cool, all the cool chicks like him. He's the reason they win all the games. And all of a sudden, he gets drafted to one of your Pac-10 schools, and he's a freshman, and he's going to be reminded that you're not the biggest player. And the worst part about it was Bose didn't get drafted to the big leagues. Apple decided to play in their field, and Bose was the supreme commander. They were the biggest, bestest. They were the guys with all the cachet and the best equipment, and that's what everybody spent their money
Yeah.
on. And all of a sudden, the biggest problem that Bose is going to run into, and I think they realize this, is that if Apple throws their engineering weight behind Bose and not just a media weight, that could actually be a problem, because up to this point, Bose, by most standards, has better sound quality than Beats. And if Beats all of a sudden has a real jump in quality over the next 2 years, and they're owned by Apple, and they stick with the marketing campaign, oh, that could be real serious business for Bose. And it's entirely, and so they got to do something, because this could turn sideways on them so fast.
Well, it's like they know it, and so they're trying to get ahead of it. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we're gonna get this NFL deal, and we're not going to influence them to ban Beats products. And it's like, okay, now we're gonna sue them, and we're gonna get this patent. And it's like they know it, and
Oh
so
yeah.
they're playing offense, and it's just like, I you don't. They're too big. I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
and you're not that much better, and so, uh,
Yeah, and you know what the
yeah.
worst and the worst part about it is the marketing campaign that Beats has been going through is a brilliant one, and one that they've done very, very, very well. They've executed on it better than anybody, but you talk to most audiophiles, Bose is who they are because of a brilliant marketing campaign in the late '90s and early 2000s. Bose has very high quality stuff, but they're not the highest quality. They're not the
Who's the
best for your
highest? Is that like
price.
Yamaha? Would be
Well,
surprised if
it depends. It depends.
button taking names.
Let's say, yeah, right. So the thing is that a lot of times what it comes down to is it's your smaller competitors and it's one company will have a better noise canceling headphone, and one company will have a better dockable thing, and one company, if you actually study it and you do all the tests and you read all the reviews, Bose is always one of your top companies, but they're never the highest all the way around. They're just the best general purpose. They do everything.
Yeah.
So on average, they're the best. But specific product lines, it's not like they're unimpeachable. So it's one of those things where, yeah, they're in a weird position, and they got to do something, I think. But yeah, early signs are not good for Bose.
They need to get bought by Google or something.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they need to be angling for. Google would totally do it.
Yeah.
Get it?
I don't know. Bose is worth a lot of money.
Maybe Microsoft. Oh, Microsoft would do it. They get in on that.
Oh my God, that seems like a terrible idea and totally something they would do.
I love that. That sounds like a terrible idea and totally something they would do. Oh, Microsoft. It's not. Oh, we do have it on there. We'll just transition to it since we got a lot of articles.
Perfect.
Did you catch this quote earlier this week? So he was at a ladies' conference.
A ladies' conference.
I don't remember what it's called. Some conference. It's the 2014 Grace Hopper Celebration, which is about. It's for women, about women. Apparently, Warren Buffett shows up like every year and enjoys it. But anyways, so Satya, he's being interviewed, And one of the things they talked about was the pay gap between women and men.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, so man, what do you think about that? And and she gave a thing about gave a kind of a little lead in and stuff. And so she was like, what do you think about the pay gap? So he goes, well, thing that perhaps most influenced me in terms of how do you look at the journey or a career. There was this guy whose name was Mike Naples, and he was the president of Microsoft when I joined. And he had the saying that would say, look, all HR systems are long-term efficient, short-term inefficient. He goes, I thought that phrase just captured it, which is it's not really about asking for a raise, but knowing and having faith that the system will actually give you the right raise as you go along. And that, I think, might be one of the additional superpowers that, quite frankly, women who don't ask for a raise have, because that's good karma. It'll come back because somebody's going to know that's the kind of person they want to trust. That's the kind of person that I want to really give more responsibility to. And in that long-term efficiency, things catch up. And I wonder, and I'm not saying that that's the only approach, I wonder whether taking the long term helps solve for what might be perceived at this uncomfortable thing of, hey, am I getting paid right? Am I getting rewarded right? Because reality is your best work is not followed by your best rewards. Your best work then has impact. People recognize it, and then you get rewards. So you have to somehow think that through, I think. And it was like they got to the end and went, yeah, but it hasn't caught up in the long run either.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
so um, essentially, you're going to do nothing about it and just go, oh, don't worry about it. In the long run, it'll be fine. Even though it has historically proven not to be fine at all, there's still a massive gap. And so apparently there was kind of a murmur and an uproar and stuff like that. And later on he was like, I was totally inaccurate on regarding how women should ask for a raise, because I think that was the question, how do they ask for a raise? And he essentially was like, don't.
Yeah.
And then he says our industry must close gender gap pay, so a raise is not needed because of a bias. Yeah.
The worst part about it is, and it's funny. I've read a lot. I've actually read a tremendous amount about this, and because it's like
Cool.
I don't know. I get into these. I'm the cynical me never wants to believe any of it because I'm a big believer that like has to be rational explanations for bias in pay gaps, racial and sexual, because the thing is that like most people just want to make as much money as they can, and the best person for that job who's going to make you the most amount of money, I really feel most people just don't care that. Like, I don't care I don't care if it's a he or her, if they're what country they're from or what their ancestry is. Like, at least that's how I look at it, and so it's hard for me to put myself in the mind space of somebody who is like, well, he's actually could make me more money in the long run, but
a little slow there.
So where do these things come from? And give me a second. Turn down for what? Okay, I'm turning down my better.
Sure.
Okay. So so basically, like the idea that was that what is the pay gap? So they've got these huge figures of like women make I think it's like 70 cents on the dollar, and then when you actually start to control things for like how much maternity leave is taken and you actually control for different stuff, so you actually compare hour to hour.
Mm-hmm.
It shrinks that gap till there's less significant of a pay gap, but there still is a pay gap. So where does that pay gap come from? Is it just sexism? Is it just men in power saying, no, I don't think you deserve as much money? Or women in power doing it to their own sex? Is it just sexism? Well, one of and that's when you start to get into that, like, there is legitimate, like, women make less money, even when you control for all different crazy factors that you can.
Yeah, same position for same amount of experience, they make less.
Yes. So how do you close that gap? And one of the big things is that sociologists cite all the time, like women are less aggressive about asking for raises. And
Yeah.
fair or not, the big thing that they have to do is be more aggressive about asking for raises, like men. That's what needs it. That's one of the things. That's one of the few things that women can do for themselves without any of the other system, changing any of the rest of the system. It's just like it's one of the few actual like practical. Be more aggressive when asking for a raise, and you'll close that gap. And are there things we can do system wide? Sure. Should we do them? Absolutely. But the one, from a practical perspective, and so for him to stand up there and be like, "Don't ask for a raise," you're like, "What? what? What are you?"
It's
What?
the
Have you
exact
not?
opposite advice.
Oh my gosh. Oh, oh, geez. Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. It was
Well,
terrible.
and you kind of get the sense that he never asked for a raise,
Yeah.
or very rarely did, and so for him, it's kind of like, you don't need to. You just keep kicking butt and taking names, and you'll be fine. You're like, yeah, I guess, but you're probably smarter and better skilled and all that stuff than the average bear, and so you didn't have to.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about here. And
Exactly. And it's
yeah,
funny. My last thought was I wrote on somebody's Facebook wall and I can comment about it, and I was like, you know what the problem is, really. He should have, you'd figure out that that's one of like you Google it for 15 minutes and you'll come to the conclusion I did. And the problem is, he's a Bing user. But
oh man, you're so mean. Um, yeah. Anyways, I thought it was fascinating. Probably not an he'll back out of it, but
oh
and they're
yeah.
like the crazy part was it wasn't like he got entrapped into it and forced to say it. They're like
Oh
he just walked right into that one, and they're like,
yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
tell
Well,
us how you really think.
that, right? Yeah. Like, oh geez, he's not getting invited back.
Yeah,
You gotta.
well, I don't. Why not, man? You get tons of news and press. Let's keep
Man.
it coming. Yeah, it's just one of those where he just didn't think through it, and
It's true.
which is fine. It happens. He probably wasn't. I don't know what he was expecting, but yeah, just kind of.
Speaking of companies that can't get their act together,
Oh yeah.
so Samsung saw their largest fall in quarterly profit since 2009. Um, they're in what is being described as a free fall.
That's a pretty good description.
Yeah, it's not such a free fall as GT's free fall. It's the gravity's a little more intense for GT, but nonetheless, not in a good position.
GT's kind of hit the ground.
That's true. Yeah,
I
they've
I
been,
would say, and now they're digging the hole.
yeah,
Samsung's still in the air.
yeah, they are in. Yeah, it's a and there's no sign in. There's no end in sight.
Sitting there going, can we glide this sucker? Can we restart the engines? We still got a little bit of time for options.
Yeah, and it's funny because you had mentioned that because they're trying to figure out what to do. The biggest problem is that Samsung's handset division is being squeezed on two ends. They were the most profitable high end because they made 4.7 and 6, 4.5 and 6 or 5.5 inch phones. And
Which,
they were
yes, they're still making money. They're not actually falling.
yeah,
I was
but
just, they're
there's
just making less money.
yeah, which is it's bad news. Well,
They're not going bankrupt anytime soon. So that analogy doesn't totally work. They're not. GT was actually like losing money, just
yeah.
like BlackBerry was.
James, would you stop it with your whole like?
Sorry,
Don't go easy on Samsung.
I gotta be fair. They still made $3.8 billion. It
Fair
just
trade.
wasn't a lot more.
It's funny that it's like the one thing like yeah, right. Obviously, I wanted to get the Moto X. That was my big thing. I was pretty in it. But like when it came time to when I realized I wasn't going to be able to get the Moto X for a couple of months, I started looking around phones. I asked a couple of people, what do you think I should get? And they were like, well, have you looked at the new Samsung phones? Like, yeah, I don't want that one. Talk to me about the other ones. Like, that was the only phone that was not on the table.
It's the S5, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, I actually went to a couple different places, talked to a couple different people, and they were all like, "Oh, gee, I guess we're not going Samsung route." No, we're
I
not.
was talking to someone where they had the S5 and they were just like, this thing's amazing. best thing ever. I was like, really? Wow, I not what any of the reviews have said, but okay, cool. You know,
Yeah, I'm
glad
like,
it's working for you.
man, if you don't know
I
any better, you
kind of
can
had
be
the
perfectly
sense that
happy.
they knew I was an iPhone user and felt the need to like over the top defend it. I've seen that
Yeah,
because heck, I do that. Heck,
you're right.
now I make fun of people with small iPhones. So whatever, it's all good. How do you
How can
read
you?
that thing?
Exactly. How do you even see? Jeez Louise. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta tell you this. So Timmy, or one of our cousins, is he was like perfectly happy with his 5S. Wasn't gonna upgrade.
Mhm.
His sister upgraded. She's got the 6.
Yeah.
And he's like kind of going on the whole like think I'm gonna get, like just the other day like he was like okay, I'll be honest. I went to this. I think it makes sense for me to get the 6, and like I can be on like he goes, I don't really need it, but it's just we're upgrading plans, so I might as well, right? I was like, you're gonna go with the 6? He's like, yeah, man, I think it's good enough. I was like, you're gonna get the lame phone, like worse battery, worse camera, worse screen, like that's small, like really? That's what you're gonna go with? He was like, I thought you were gonna come at me with the whole like, you should just stick with the 5S because it's good enough. I was like, no, man, you gotta get the best of the best. And he was like, I don't know, I think I'll be okay. And I talked to his sister later, and I was like, oh yeah, he is such a sucker for like he wants to be one of the cool kids. Like he's got to be like it's bothering him that he's gonna have the year-old phone and nobody else will, and he's gonna be like the old school one. So now I'm like, he is prime target to get him to spend that extra $100 on the biggest phone because that'll make him that much. If you can convince him that that's actually what the cool kids are doing, oh man, he won't be able to help himself. It's gonna be awesome. So
You're so mean.
I know. and
Yes.
so that's the goal. But yeah, so anyways, so Samsung, they're being squeezed on two ends. They're being squeezed on the
Yep.
high end by the iPhone hardcore. But really and truly, it's not just there. They're getting squeezed like crazy on the low end because they were the big supplier to China. I mean, they were doing great business there. And now Xiaomi and Lenovo, they're coming in with their super cheap phones, super cheap stuff, and they're taking over. They're just cleaning up with the low end, which really leaves Samsung to kind of exist in the middle ground, which is where HTC and LG and Motorola, those are like the only place where they're having any success. So now it's
Well,
like
and are they? I mean,
exactly, and there is no success there. More
yeah.
importantly, it's the only way that they're not dead. As a division is that and so it's just not the phone market is not looking very pretty for Samsung right now at all. And are they going to go bankrupt? No, they're doing fine. The biggest thing that Samsung's got going for them is they are a massive manufacturer of so many different things, TVs, screens, components, chips. They've got some of the biggest foundries in the world. Samsung is a gigantic company capable of. They've been one of Apple's biggest suppliers over the years. Like they have got their hands in so many different things. They're very, very successful and very, very good at what they do. And it's just that they put way more eggs in that one basket over the past couple of years than the other ones because it was making all the money. Why not? And I just want to bring up the point that last week I brought you the article or 2 weeks ago, I brought us the article of that Samsung had moved 500 engineers from their mobile divisions to other divisions, other devices. And I said at the time that I think it's because of they're getting a lot of pressure in their handset devices and they're trying to diversify and move out of there because they don't see a roadmap forward. And you told me that was ridiculous. And then 2 weeks later, we got this report saying everything's going wrong. It's like huge emergency on the whole handset division thing, and they're changing the company around and turning it into something that's more diverse, more stable, and is part of the bigger market, and kind of going back to what they were, which is just a general purpose. They do everything, and they do it all pretty well, and they compete for price, and which is a good place for the company to be. There's no shame in that. It happens.
Oh man.
Well,
I remember saying that, but that's cool. Yeah.
I remembered it. It bothered me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, I like Squarespace.
Yeah.
I think they do a lot of things right. Um, Obviously, you know, if you're kind of a do-it-yourselfer, you're probably going to go with WordPress because that's free, for one, and also gives you a ton of flexibility. But I like a lot of what Squarespace does, and anytime I've got a um, non-technical inclined friend, I guess, they're the company that I always recommend.
And this is for building websites, yeah?
It's for building websites, any type of website, and because I just think their layouts and their designs are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about it is they have created a very neat like GUI where you can actually be choosing options on one side of the pane. And this is in their, they just announced Squarespace 7, which is their new automatic thing. And so you can be doing, you could be editing, changing things on the site, and then like watch it update live in a pane right next to you. And so it's really, it's like, it's making a website for dummies, but it's not dumb. You know,
Yeah.
it does it really well. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And they also just announced that they've done an integration with Getty Images now. So for like an extra $10 a month, you can use any of their 10 million images for your website.
Getty's pretty good.
Yeah, they're also integrated with Google Apps, which is kind of nice, and another ones. But it's just very like, I don't know. I like the company. I like what they're doing.
You know what I have to compliment Getty Images on?
Surviving?
How difficult it is to get rid of their watermarks. It is. They already do a good job of having them be relatively obscure, but just impossibly obvious. Like you can't like.
Right.
They just do a good job with that. Like it's hard to steal their images and get away with it.
Well, there's that. Which is cool. But anyways, I think they're neat. I have a bunch of actually real estate people that I'm like, you should use this instead of going with the classic real estate website that just looks horrible. But they've got the listing widget in them. And they're like, oh, that's why I want it. But the websites just look bad, and they're actually like more expensive. They charge like, they're more expensive than Squarespace, and they just look like garbage. But anyways, I think they're a cool company. They raise some money. They come out with Squarespace 7. If you've got non-technical friends, I'd highly recommend them.
Nice. I like it.
Another startup that is kind of cool is Airbnb.
Yeah,
Not only are they cool, they're now legal in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Kind of. They're also now being regulated by San Francisco people, which is cool.
Is it?
I don't know. It's, you know, it's like, for example, they've got to pay the hotel taxes, and now they're making the individuals pay it instead of the company pay for it. And there's something about if it's a non-owner occupied building, so it's straight up rental, you can only host for 90 days in the year. If it's your own home, it's kind of unlimited.
Which, and
I think it's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, oh man, this is a dangerous line to walk. It's the politics of San Francisco and the politics of California at large. There are, to some degree, it's not entirely unfair to say, when you own property in San Francisco, you're really renting it from the city. They tell you what to do with it and what you are and aren't allowed to do. And my concern is, it's funny, you know, it's like one of the things that they're trying to prevent is they're trying to prevent renters from getting kicked out of their house to turn them into makeshift hotels. I get that, and I understand why they're trying to do that. The problem is that these owners, if you can make more money renting out your house as a makeshift hotel, the moment the renter leaves, instead of it being an open rental place, they're going to turn it into an Airbnb place, and they'll just never let renters come in. It'll be their primary residence. They'll figure out a way to not have it be a hotel and take advantage of this. And the deal that you're going to run into, and the problem that San Francisco is going to, and it's funny, part of the whole gentrification problem that they're having, and part of the whole the rent going through the roof is there is less, there are disincentives to renting out your properties in San Francisco, this being one of them, that make it so that there are fewer and fewer and fewer rentals, which is really the most affordable way to live in the city. And I don't know. I mean, like, but at the same time, I can understand the whole idea of somebody's been renting from you for 10 years and all of a sudden this new service comes around, so you're going to get kicked out of your house because you want to, I get that too. As a renter, that'd be pretty rough, especially if you've been there long enough, your job there, your kids goes to school there. What are you supposed to do, especially with how expensive San Francisco is right now and what's going on in the city? But it's a weird thing. I think long term, they're going to try to gradually shift these policies to not have anybody be rocked too hard. But I got a feeling that this is going to be a bigger mess than they want it to be, unfortunately. I think this is one of those new disruptive things. It's just disruptive, period. And when disruptive things happen, people get, guess what? Disrupted. And it makes me glad I'm not living in San Francisco, because it's not, I think this is far from over, this whole conversation. On legalizing and regulating Airbnb. The only way you could really stop it from being super disruptive is to make it cost prohibitive, and I think that that's one of the goals of the whole hotel tax is that'll get raised until, because right now it got passed as a hotel tax, but it's one more vote away until it gets taxed at a different rate than traditional hotels. And once that happens, then they can jack it up as much as they want to disincentivize it. But whatever, and we'll let that time. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Fair enough. So last week, you reminded me of my brilliant concept of being king of the hill, and when you're king of the hill, people start taking notice of you and becoming highly critical, if you will. Yeah. And even a few weeks prior to that, we mentioned that Lego is now the #1 toy manufacturer in the world.
Yeah.
So not surprised at all to find that they're being targeted now.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you're #1. Welcome to the bigs. And so apparently there was this video done. It was a crude oil spoof, I guess, where they did this video about crude oil and Shell, and they made the video using stop animation with Legos.
Yeah.
And apparently Lego has had this 50-year partnership with Shell. And so Greenpeace was like, we want you to not have that anymore, please. Yeah. And so they did this video, and it's a video that starts off by showing animals in a snowy wilderness, and then it moves on to a scene of heavy machinery drilling for oil with gentle background music as a Shell-branded road tanker and petroleum station are brought into view. And then it zooms to a pinstripe businessman smoking a cigar on a Shell offshore drilling rig. And yeah, it's just like classic Greenpeace type of video. But it worked! Lego's going to say, nope, we're not going to renew the old partnership with Shell. So it's all good.
So what does that mean? What entailed in the partnership? Because obviously Lego produces a tremendous amount of plastic, which guess what? That comes from crude oil. So was that the nature of their?
I don't know. I thought they were logo. I don't know. But what I do know is that according to the video, Shell is polluting our kids' imagination.
It's true, yeah. Well, I mean, what was the name of Octacore? Octacore? Is that?
Yeah, something like that. Which very much felt like it was Shell.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's supposed to be. Let's see. It's Lego. Yeah, it is Octane. Oh,
there we go.
Oh man, I love that movie. I love Lego. Yeah, that's the is Octane Corporation. That's right. And
Yeah.
they're the big oil dudes. But I'm assuming that they have to get the they've obviously they produce enough plastic that I'm sure that they have a dedicated partner who supplies them with their raw materials and gives them a steady supply for what they need. And what are they going to do? Not make plastic? Well, honestly, it's probably what Greenpeace is hoping.
Yeah, I don't know. But I
So
did
it's
like
like
Lego's statement where they said, "We firmly believe Greenpeace ought to have a direct conversation with Shell, and that the Lego brand and everyone who enjoys creative play should never have become part of Greenpeace's dispute with Shell." So they're like, "Yeah, we're not going to do it anymore, but really, guys, really?"
right.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know what the partnership was, but it sounds like it was coming to an end anyways.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Well, hey, it's King of the Hill.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's exactly what it is.
Speaking of King of the Hill, it comes with negatives and positives, and this is one of the more positive ones. So Jonny Ives is being thrust forward as
Just
the
gonna skip
creative.
over that other one. All right, that's cool. We'll come back to it.
We'll
Go.
come back around to it. Jonny Ives is being thrust forward as the king of the hill in Apple. He's the creative genius behind all of their cool products. And with the Apple Watch coming out, they're forcing him to stand on stage and actually talk to people as a living
Yeah, they are.
human.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they're proving that he's alive, is what I've decided. He's not just a computer animation, modulated
He
voices.
could be. He could be. Well, now
It's
we know he's not.
exactly that's what I'm saying. Like it's up to this point, it was hard to prove that Johnny existed. Um, and no, he's fully coming forward as the as the voice and vision of Apple, and or not the voice, but the vision of Apple, and they're having him do interviews and stuff. And so Vogue did an interview with him this earlier this week, Friday,
That was
and
last week, I thought.
right, was it last week?
Yep,
Was
it
it
was last week.
Oh wow, I didn't see it till Friday.
Uh,
Um, but but the video came. So I saw the video on Friday. That's when I saw it. But so one of the things is that I asked him just a bunch of different questions about his design process and what he does and his
he's
team.
had some good quotes too.
Oh
It's been
jeez,
fun.
there
He's not.
it is.
He doesn't care. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It was a tank of an interview, and there was some really, really good stuff. And one of my favorite parts is when he was asked, like, what about the advice of Steve Jobs, and what are the best lessons? And one of the things that I found that actually got me was the idea of focus. And he talked about this. He talked about Steve would come up to him and say, "Hey, what have you said no to lately?" You're trying to make sure he stays focused. And
Huh.
Johnny was like, "Well, I would have these projects in the back of my mind that I were like my sacrificial. I said no to them." So Steve would ask, and he'd say, "Oh, I said no to this project. I said no to that project." And Steve would go, "Well, yeah, but you didn't like those projects. You wouldn't have done them if you could. So how about saying no to something else?" And Johnny would get all like get all disturbed, like, "Oh, come on, don't do that." And that's some classic Steve Jobs reading something like a book. And he was like, so eventually what he would have to do is he'd have to say no to projects that he really, really liked. And he said, there is something invigorating about, I'm paraphrasing, there's something invigorating about the idea of saying no to an idea that you think is truly good. It's a great idea. It keeps you up at night. You wake up thinking about it because you think it's such a great idea to it, but because you lose focus on your other ideas, you say no to it. And that gives you drive and energy on the projects you've said yes to, because you're having to say no to great ideas in order to stay focused on the ideas you're already on. And it was funny, man. Having Jonny Ives say that, I think might have actually changed my life, because I am notoriously unfocused. Like I don't feel like I'm having any fun unless I'm working on 6 different things at a time, which means I'm not never focused on anything and never really succeed on anything, and very rarely ever finish anything. Very rarely. Like I know that my sister-in-law was rather impressed when we made it into like our 10th week of this show, because I was still doing it, like, because I don't have focus. It was
Wait, who?
Jesse.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about, but the way you put that out there.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, and it's one of those things where I tend to, yeah, I tend to lose focus on stuff,
Huh.
and it happens, and just, but and what it is I think I'm good enough that I can, and to have somebody like Jonny Ives who's like great at what he does, just like brilliant, sometimes I say no to the best ideas I've ever had because I lose focus. You're like, oh man. I sure have a high opinion of myself if I think I'm better at this game than Jonny Ives, and a little bit, maybe I need to shift how I do things in my life, and winnow away the different projects I'm working on a little bit. I like this one. I think it's one of the better ones I'm at. So I'm
Yeah,
not. This
I've
isn't me
noticed.
quitting.
I have noticed three characteristics that tend to span highly successful people. Um, Two of which are kind of like, yeah, duh. The third one's always been surprising. Um, but the first one is like you just said. It's this ability to focus, to say, no, I'm going to work on this one thing. And when you think about um, public figures, whether they're athletes or otherwise, they tend to be a public figure because they do one thing really well.
Yeah.
It's either a sport or acting or design work, whatever, or the instrument that they play. They do that one thing, and they focus on that thing. The other component that I tend to notice that they have is they work really hard,
Yeah.
unbelievably hard. You think you and I are busy. We're not relative to them.
No.
They're unbelievably busy. It just happens to be on this one thing. And
Yeah.
like you said, we're always like, oh my gosh, I'm working on this 6 to 12 things. And it's like, no, they're working on this one, and they're actually putting in more time than we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Total. Not
Yeah,
just. I mean, which is crazy.
yeah. And so there's that. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, it's because they love it and they're not really working. But I think it goes deeper than that.
So,
It's because there's parts that they don't like, but they do it anyways.
yeah, and to me it's Jonny Ives. Like the guy can't touch anything without making it beautiful. Like he can't stop thinking about how everything is ugly in his world, and he constantly doesn't just go and make things right. Because it allows him to stay focused. That's the thing that gets me. Is it's like the guy just I imagine sitting in his brain and just seeing everything kind of in flux of like sitting in a room and thinking everything here is ugly and I could make it beautiful. But I won't.
Yeah.
Because then I'll fail at everything else.
The final thing that I've noticed that they all do, and I put two and one together here, is that they most of them wake up early and exercise,
Yeah.
which I think it just helps get the brain flowing and pumping, but it's also used as a form of meditation, and again, it just helps them focus. But I've noticed that pretty unequivocally across the board that those tend to be the three characteristics of people who are successful and do what I would say impactful things to the world and society.
So
Again, not to make us feel bad, that's just like the beginning part of the show.
I don't know. So speaking of impactful things and things that Jonny Ives has done, they did ask him about the Apple Watch a little bit, obviously.
Not surprising.
And
Was there.
it's yeah, and so this quote, and I just love this quote because I've been trying to defend the coming smartwatch revolution for a while. Obviously, earlier in the show, I've like emphatically endorsed the idea of the smartwatch just after using it for a half a day. I think they're awesome, and I might be a little bit torn, but when people ask, like why would I have that when I have my phone? And I've always liked to respond with the question of why did we switch to wristwatch from pocket watches? That's the analogy, and it's a big question. It's actually a question I don't necessarily have a great answer to. I have a number of kind of terrible answers to, or kind of good answers, I should say. And when you ask other people, they can all come up with rationales and reasonabilities. But the one thing that's true is we shifted from pocket watches to wristwatches, and we stayed there. And if it was a fashion statement simply, they would have gone back. which means there was something more. There was some utility. There was some purpose. There was some reason why we decided we didn't want them in our pockets. We wanted them on our wrists. Then the cell phone came out, and we migrated back. And it's funny, the most people who think that the watch is not, the smartwatch isn't going to take off, are people who view watches simply as jewelry. And because they sit there and they go, well, young people don't like watches because they're not cool. They don't get them. They're not into watches. It's just they don't look at the utility of it. And so Jonny Ives, when they asked him about it, Johnny says, Johnny, I've always been interested in watches. At first, watches were designed before pockets were invented, so they were hung around the neck. Then pocket watches happened, which were worn on fingers in the 17th century. For reasons of function, for reasons of utility, it ended up on the wrist, and you'll notice it stayed there for over 100 years. It now has historical gravitas. It's a really great place to be able to glance quickly at information. And it's funny, I sat there and I just was like, oh my gosh. I came up with that analogy independent of Jonny Ives and the rest of the world. That was like my thought. I thought it was an original thought. I don't need to be credited for the one coming up with this thought, although there's a good chance that Jonny Ives listens to this show, and he's just like, hey, that's a great way to put it. But the reality of it is, just the fact that Jonny Ives came up with the same analogy that I did, and that's why he could justify it, boom! Like, I felt so smart. I felt so incredibly smart. It made me feel really, really good about myself. And, maybe if I had some focus, I could be impactful, because evidently I come up with the same great ideas that Jonny Ives does. Just in an uglier way. But I was just, it's funny. And the more I think about it, the more I was talking with one of my friends earlier today. You put a 3G antenna in it, you whisper data to it over time, you package it with the rest of your data plans, and now you have a device that lets you know when you need to go back to your phone. It's inevitable, man. 2 years from now, they'll really start taking off. A decade from now, everyone will have watches and not phones. I guarantee it. And this is what I've really decided, is that, and this is my biggest thing, I honestly think that phones between 3.5 inches to 5.5 inches, phones as we define them, are the worst screen sizes out there. They're tiny for mobility's sake, but they're too big for mobility's sake, and they're too big or too small for usability. We want iPhones, we want iPad minis, we want iPads for usabilities, but there's no mobility in it. You can't keep it with you all the time, and you can't use it if it's the size of a watch, because you can't put a battery in it, you can't put it in a cell phone antenna. But if you can interact with it for small things, sending text messages, looking at updates, and it can tell you when to go to the computer, you put it near the computer, it logs in all your information, and all of a sudden you're up and running. We're done. We don't need phones. We don't need phones. Phones are ridiculous. And the best part about it is the voice memos on iMessages. That's going to be the greatest thing in the world, because Siri, they've acknowledged Siri has a hard time. Internally, they acknowledge Siri's not perfect at translating. So what you're going to do with your watch is you're going to say, "Hey Siri, send a text message, send a voice message to James. I'll be there in 10 minutes," and then you're going to get that message saying, sending the voice message as opposed to just, and then it'll translate the text. You'll get both, and boom, we'll be off and running, and you won't need your phone. You're not going to need your phone in 10 years. We're going to look back and think phones were goofy. I can't believe you'd you'd have that in your pocket. It's just like, the more I think about it, the more I go, oh my gosh, this is obvious. How is this not obvious? Like, How are we still having a debate about the future of this? It's just technology needs to catch up. That's it.
Wow. It's pretty bold statements there. I don't know if I fully agree with you yet, but I'm...
Well, you haven't worn them for one for half a day, so...
Hey, I mean, I've only had a Pebble, so what do I know? Huh. Interesting. I could see where it does become, majority of your use as they figure out the interactions and how to do.
I'm pretending.
Do a lot on.
Yeah, I'm pretending I don't have my phone. I'm using my phone as a hotspot mostly, and I can do most of what I want to do. Which is a really, really compelling idea if you let that settle in for just a little bit. if you could put the antenna in my watch, I wouldn't need my phone. I'd just keep my iPad in my bag, and I'd go for it whenever I need a bigger screen. And then I just Wi-Fi, I'd use it as a hotspot on my wrist. Now, are we far from that technology? Probably quite a bit. I mean, it could take 10 years. But
battery's the limiting factor.
well, it's the antennas are big too. I mean, it's more complicated, but it's not insurmountable, and I do think it's eventual. But anyways.
We'll see.
Oh, and so Elon Musk unveiled his new Model D Tesla. I managed to get through that without any childish jokes.
Are you do you want a Tesla now?
I've wanted one forever. I could stick with the Model S. The Model D is friggin' impressive, but it's crazy expensive. I mean, it is a luxury vehicle.
I just want the technology package.
Well,
I mean, I'll take it all, but
they don't have any patents, so you're welcome. Build it yourself, man.
Okay.
It's
I gotta stay focused on my other stuff. Sorry.
Right. The Tesla D is a dual motor device or car. That's why they call it the D. And it goes from 0 to 60 in like less than 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Which is on par with like your high-end Corvettes. Which is impressive. That's very impressive.
I guess
I really like
that kind of thing.
I love Corvettes. They're one of my faves. So I'm a little bit into that sort of thing. They just are crazy expensive. It goes farther than the Model S too, by about 10 miles. Jeez, right? I feel like we're splitting hairs. But yeah. So it's just a new model car. It's funny. I'm giving it short shrift because it's a new model. It's cool. It's an upgrade. One of the big things is like the not autopilot, but assisted driving stuff. It'll change lanes. It'll do cruise control. It'll read speed signs. It'll automatically park. All very cool technologies.
Well, I won't park yet, but that's on the.
It won't?
It's on the roadmap.
I thought they said it would.
Nah, he was talking about the future for that.
Oh, okay.
No, but it'll stay within your lane. It'll do the adaptive speed control, and and it'll let you. It'll let you know if you're speeding. Is what it sounded like. It won't actually slow you down.
Yeah. How about you mind your own business, Alon? I've liked everything you've done up to this point, but
they were saying that it's like the Tesla autopilot or cruise control, whatever, was lagging behind all the other manufacturers.
yeah.
And now they just leaped over all of them.
Yeah.
And they were saying like that's probably very similar technology to what Google's using for their stuff. It's just very sleekly hidden in the vehicle.
Yeah, and it's probably one of those. It's close to what Google is doing because they're friendly. They don't view each other as competitors yet.
And this is exactly how I said it was going to work. Where, okay, first we got maintain your speed. Then we're going to do adaptive speed control. Then we're going to do, stick in your lane. Then you'll enable you to, execute lane changes and, things like that. It's not going to, what Google's doing is fairly cool. And they're just kind of trying to do it all at once. But it's like, no, it's just going to be this incremental slow creep to automation.
Well, it's exactly. I mean, it's incredibly. What Google is doing is incredibly important, and it's the Xerox park that was building GUIs before anybody else was, or when they built up all the infrastructure for the internet before anybody else was. Basically, Google's asking the question, where are we going to be in 10 years? And then doing all, what are we going to be capable of technologically in 10 years? And then doing all the computer science, so by the time we get there, there's already a roadmap from a scientific perspective, a computational perspective. How do we do this? How do we accomplish it? They're doing, and it's incredibly important work, and they don't care if they make any money off of it. I mean, they want to, but it's not the end of the world if they don't.
Yeah.
It's their service to the world, like all the other companies before them that made what they do possible. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, and slowly people will look at what Google does, they'll look at how Google does it, and they'll incorporate the best parts of that until, some Steve Jobs walks over and says, "Hey, that's pretty cool, Google," and makes a lot of money
Yeah,
doing it.
but it's just one of those where Google's go through all these fights of autonomous vehicle, not fights, but the going on the law side of that and having to
Regulation.
deal with all that. Yeah, thank you, regulation piece. And it's like these other cars, they're not going to, and not necessarily because Google's doing it for them, but just because they're gonna slowly get there and it'll just feel natural.
Well, and most importantly, by the time they get to the point where they would have to start doing that dance with the legislatures, Google will have already quote unquote solved it. Or that's their goal.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, and I mean, and I'm saying even if Google wasn't there to do that, it wouldn't have mattered
Right.
anyways. They would
Right.
have, it just would have been like, yeah, this makes sense, and we've proven all these other steps. We've proven the ability to stay in the lane and to detect the car behind us and in front of us. Now all we're doing is we're changing lanes. That's it.
Yeah.
You go, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure, go ahead, do it. And now you know what I mean. And now it's like, okay, we've proven all this other stuff. Now all we're doing is getting off the freeway. Okay,
Right.
now we've already parked the car. We've already started it automatically. We've already put in the destination. Now all we're doing is pulling out of the parking lot. You know what I mean? And it's just gonna, like I said, it's just gonna be incrementally, just a little bit each time. And yeah, it's cool. It's exciting. Similar to you, I'm like, oh man, I'll take one of those.
Jeez. It's brutal having to drive by the factory every day. I want one so bad. It's a good thing they're crazy expensive because if they cost $40,000 a year, I might try to figure it out.
Well, they were saying that his like the revamping of this what might have been because they're struggling to get the Model E3, whatever it is, um, to hit the price point and stuff that they're looking for. So
Thank goodness, because I can't
yeah,
afford it, and I'm gonna try to.
yeah,
Give me a little more time, Elon. I appreciate it.
yeah, yeah. All right, man. Good show. I think we actually covered everything. Oh wait, you got some red ones.
Um, just sail on, man.
Okay, all right. Um, yeah, we good show. Really good show. I'm gonna attempt to get some sleep tonight. We'll see if that works out for me.
Nice.
Try to get not as sick as I have been. Um, yeah, that's not gonna work out for me, but that's okay. Um, cool. Everybody, we appreciate you listening. We genuinely do. So with that, thank you for joining us. My name is James Furlo. My less than sick brother is Matthew Furlo, and so we will talk next time.